Jordan, thanks so much for coming on the Not Too Cool for School podcast. I'm super excited to have you on, man. We have something that we're going to talk about, something that's, a very hot topic issue right now, something very polarizing. But before we get into that, I wanted to take a moment to allow you to introduce yourself, kind of give your upbringing and your background, and go from there.
Okay, well, my name is Jordan Randall. I'm from Columbia, Maryland, post-racial society. But I'm the author of a book called Pinkface. It's a book about a high school senior who pretends to transition to woman to help themselves get into college. It's a satire, and a lot of people don't think it's satire, but that's whenever you make something that's artistic, people kind of put their own input on it.
Always. Everyone has their own opinion. Everyone wants to put their 2 cents into it. What was your upbringing like? Because obviously, I'm excited to talk about the book. But a lot of times when people start, especially when they dive into a topic like this, they either have a certain upbringing or certain experiences that kind of lead to this point. Was that kind of the case for you? Did you have a certain upbringing that kind of led you to writing about this book and about the topic, or was it something where it was like, you know what, this seems fun, let's do it?
Okay, yeah. So I share a trait with probably every young adult author. My high school experience wasn't that great. Instead of going to therapy, why not just write a book about it? So I had a little bit of that experience. Born and raised in Columbia, Maryland, and my mother is Black, my father's white. It's been an integral part of my identity for a long time. There hasn't really been too much of a representation of that perspective on a large scale, and that's one of the things that I'm trying to change. So I spent years as an audio engineer. I'm a trained musician. I used to go to college for voice, so in case I sound like I have the voice, that's the reason why. But yeah, that's not to get too much into me, because I want to talk about my work.
Of course. Awesome. No, I totally get it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Yeah, it's I think everyone at least at one point has one of those high school experiences. Some good, some bad. Some people worse than others. Throughout the entire. But it's interesting to see how that kind of plays out. And just kind of a funny note. My wife and I were talking about this the other day, where it was like, high school is such a integral part of people's lives. Where there's people who have gone to college, which is another 4 years and another 4 years of experience. But yet for some reason that still doesn't play as big of a part as high school does.
Yeah.
For a lot of people. And my wife and I were talking about that because we loved our college experience. But we both had two very different high school experiences that kind of led us to who we are. And that's probably because, that's when you're about to enter adulthood, kind of, maybe legally, but not mentally. So with that in mind, let's talk about Pinkface.
All right, let's do it.
I know you talked a little bit about it at the beginning, but can you describe what the book is about? What's your, 30-second elevator pitch of what the book is before we dive into the meat of it?
Okay, so the book is about a insecure high school senior. He gets rejected at Princeton University, and his ultimate goal is to go to Harvard. And the book is a satire on the type of what I call white liberalism that I grew up around. So, and it's the best way I would describe it is liberalism for me and not liberalism for thee, where there's a lot of exclusionary things towards Black and non-white perspectives. So he gets insecure about it. So to stand out and get some type of affirmative action or anything along those lines, he pretends to transition to woman, so his college application looks a lot better, so he can become a minority. There's a lot of things that he learns on the way and a lot of things that he doesn't, but that's essentially what the book is about.
So especially with some of the rulings that just passed lately, this kind of goes out the door a little bit, but
yeah,
nonetheless, an interesting perspective. I definitely know that this topic, at least the topic about you know, being transgender or the transgenders, the LGBTQ community. Um, it's a very hot topic, something that they're very passionate about, something that both sides politically are very passionate about, one way or the other, good or bad. You're either with me or against me, whether it's this side or that side, red or blue. But a very unique approach for an individual to decide to, especially if it's not something that they are, you know, fully, this is what I want to do. This is, who I want to be. But to decide I'm going to do this to better my future, a very unique take. What made you think of that?
Um, Blackface. That was one of the first things that, I mean, that's where the title came from. It was kind of a play on the term blackface. I was like, all right, blackface, pink face. It kind of just hit. The inspiration for it. Are you asking about the inspiration for it?
More so, like, the individual, right? He's transitioning into a woman, right? But pretending to, right? He's pretending to. But with something that's so heated, so polarizing, and the people who transition, at least that we see, from a media perspective, from a social perspective, they say this is who I am, this is what I am, this is what I want to be. Especially when you have individuals like Dylan Mulvaney and whatnot, who like, this is me. Um, at least from my understanding, this doesn't seem like to be, something where he's like, I am a woman. It's more so, I'm going to pretend to do this so that I can better my future. So it's not something that he really fully believes in. It's just what he wants to do to better his future. So more so, where did the idea come to, have it be something where he's going to pretend uh, for the future, or, to better his future, rather than, this is me, this is who I am.
Yeah. So the main character, Alfred, he's aware of the position that minorities get when it comes to liberal institutions or anything along those lines. He's hyper aware of the situation that a lot of minorities get put into, and he decides that he can use that to his advantage to get himself into college. It's one of the things that I wanted to play on with the book was that hyper awareness that a lot of white people have about the treatment of minorities, both positive and negative, and everything that he's doing. He's actually conscientious of what's happening. So I wanted to satirize that type of person.
Gotcha. That makes sense. That makes absolute sense. So obviously, like you said, the book plays on satire a lot.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And kind of goes into that. So talk about that a little bit. What obviously satire is, some people take it, they love it. I personally love satire. I don't care what it's about, what it's doing, right? Because it's satire. But for a lot of individuals, satire might as well be an attack on them. So
it's just reading comprehension, like
yeah,
a lot of people are going to struggle with it.
Talk about the satire of the book. Talk about the satire of the book.
Yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to satirize is, like I said many times, like the white liberalism, right? So there's been studies done on bias education that when someone has an incomplete education of racial bias, those perspectives that they originally had actually get more emboldened, because it's like taking the 101 class and then thinking that you're actually a doctor, where it's kind of like the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you know a little bit about it, but you have no idea that you don't really know all these, like you don't really have a depth of understanding of the topic. What you know is essentially a bunch of definitions. And I wanted to satirize that. So like there's a character in it, and I've gotten a lot of criticism for this, and some of it gets a little bit personal, but one of the characters in there, his name is Trent, he uses the N-word a lot, right? And so in my experience growing up, it didn't matter if like the white kids that I was hanging out with were liberal or conservative, they both used the N-word. They used it a lot. And especially when you were playing video games, you heard it constantly.
Call of Duty.
Constantly. And then once they're in public, they will shame other people for making any type of racially insensitive remark. But behind the scenes, when no one is seeing them, the most blatant hypocrisy comes out. And so and in fact, one of the funny things is some of the reviews, and this is where it gets a little bit personal. Some of the reviews are calling into question whether or not I'm Black enough to be able to write the N-word in my book. And what I'm doing is like, this is something that I get really pissed off about. What I am doing is speaking my truth to power. Like I'm speaking I don't think in media anyone has actually encapsulated what the average white suburban teenager sounds like. They kind of want to gloss over it. I think that's one of the reasons why people are getting upset, because they see a little bit too much of themselves in it.
It makes me think, I graduated high school in 2011. So it's been about, 12 years or so since I graduated. And I think back to my freshman year of high school where, maybe sophomore year, I can't necessarily remember. Seems like forever ago. But, back when Halo was huge, and online. But not just that, I even remember, I personally wasn't like that just because, I didn't feel right. But a lot of people, in my school that were white would, say the, non-full version of the N-word.
Yeah.
But it was like, more towards like, hanging out with friends, or they were talking about their Black friends. And, a lot of, their Black friends just, they didn't care, because it wasn't so racially driven back then. It was a lot more, and it could be because of social media, it could be because of media, but there was just a lot more, they would call, white people the C word, but it was because they were friends. Granted, times have changed. It's not like that anymore, and all that kind of stuff. But it's just the times have changed, and now, all of this stuff in today's society is just like, if one person were to say that, it's the end. It's the end. There's a couple people on social media that
and not to interrupt you too much. And one of the things that I think that I went through was, and pretty much every single Black kid that has gone to a school with like a bunch of like white people, and like they're in a dramatic minority, they kind of let them say that because it's a way to blend in. Because they're trying to just fit in. You see what I'm saying? It's like it's like, hey, I don't want to be the person that screws up all the fun, and now I'm no longer getting invited to all this stuff because I had to call out, the stupidity. So a lot of people do. I have done it before. I am almost positive a lot of other Black people have kind of just let it go, let people get away with it, because they're just like, hey, I'm just trying to fit in.
No, that's a great perspective to know. Because to anyone else, it's they just, unless they know, they don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And so if no one does say anything, they don't know, they're going to continue to do it. And so if back then that's how it was, or, based off of what you said, it's one experience. So if one person is experiencing it, obviously many others are experiencing it. But it's an interesting perspective to have and know now. Because again, like I said, times have changed. It's not like that anymore. Anyone says it, unless you're, a comedian and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm this is just me, but I believe the comedy world, if you're a comedian,
comedy's sacred.
Oh yeah, it's sacred.
Comedy's sacred.
Everything is open.
Yeah,
but,
and Go ahead. Yeah, so one thing I will say about, like, if you're making like a joke about like race, I'm all right with it as long as I'm laughing. But if it's one of those things where it's like, haha, and like the punchline is like, Black people are dumb or some crap like that, it's like that's not funny. Like if it's something that I'm laughing about, like what am I supposed to do? Like if I'm laughing, like I cannot sit there and be like, I was offended. I was sitting there laughing. No, like, I can't bring myself to be like, end this man's career. I was laughing.
Yeah, no, completely. I honestly, whether it's I'm half Mexican, so whether it's about Mexicans, I'm also half white. It's and it's funny, this is kind of a side topic, but there's anyone that I feel like is half white and half something else, they're like this. They're their own little community. So you can be half black, half white, half Hispanic, half white. Half this and half white. They're part of like their own community because they're not
Yes,
accepted this way, or
100%.
because it's just like, okay, well, you may be Hispanic, but you don't get to make, racially charged Hispanic jokes. Or, okay, you're white, so you need to be like this, but at the same time, you also don't get to, fall onto your, black background, or, whatever it may be. So it's just one of those things where it's like, and I roll at it, it's just like, whatever, but they are part of their own little community because they can't go this way or that way. But heading back to the book.
Yeah.
So obviously, he's pretending, there's obviously a lot of different characters in it. Talk about his journey in the book, because he's pretending, and the transgender community, if you were to pretend, I'd imagine, and again, I can't say anything, I don't know. I don't, because I can say one thing and then all of a sudden, I'm getting attacked. But at the same time, this kind of stuff needs to be talked about. It needs to be open, because it's not this side or that side. It's like, you need to be able to talk about things. So I'd imagine the transgender community would attack someone that is pretending. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, do you want to talk about my experience as an author, or like as the character himself? Like where is the characters, like in, like where are their intentions going? Like what happens with this character?
Yeah, so his intentions, his journey through pretending, and what pretending has led to, rather than him committing to transitioning.
Yeah, so this is a spoiler alert. If you don't want to get spoiled, I will, cut it right here and then find some other place to pick back up. So everything that he wants to do works. Like he succeeds in every single thing that he sought out to do. Like one of the things that he wanted to do was get into Harvard. He gets into Harvard. One of the things that he wanted to do was get a senator to sign is related with his mother, to senator to sign a letter of recommendation, and it works for him. Everything that he wants to have happen works for him. His parents are well connected. That's how reality happens. Like when your parents are well connected, you don't have to take the same journey that a lot of other people will have to take. And it's a satire of the type of person who's aware of those things, aware that they're in that situation, and just does it anyway. Like that's the satire. Now, if you want to talk about the harassment that I've faced, that's an entirely different story.
Well, we'll get into that in a second.
Yeah.
We'll get into that in a second. And I don't think you spoiled too much, because a lot of times people want to figure out how that happens. It's not so much what happens, it's how it happens. But at the same time, I think it's interesting to, talk about the journey of these individuals, because again, this is something that isn't really, and who knows what's happening. I haven't read anything online. I haven't seen anything in the media. I haven't seen anything on social media where there's an individual who's pretending to do this to get something. Because I believe if anyone was caught doing that, it would be the end of their, career, their life, no one would trust them.
Yeah.
It would be, so the LGBTQ community would probably shun that individual. And obviously already, conservative individuals would be like, well, first off, we're not even in agreement with this, but now you're just taking it to a whole new level to capitalize on the system.
The first thing I would say is George Santos. Like, I mean, it worked.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it worked. I mean, he's currently a congressperson. Like, he is in Congress.
It's true. But, so kind of going off of that, obviously, this book and everything that it's kind of led to or talks about and all that has led to an effect in your life, has impacted you in unique ways. So let's talk about that. Again, the book is about an individual who's pretending to transition into a transgender woman in order to better their life, get into college, get, ahead and all of those kinds of things. We did talk about a couple of the aspects, so, you don't want to ruin the entire book for those who decide to read it. But just someone listening to that aspect of it would immediately go, you're a homophobe, you're a transphobe, you're
Yeah.
this, that, without even reading the book, right? Because people, in today's world, everything is judge a book by its cover. Ironically, everything is judge a book by its cover, which this book has a very unique cover. I know you guys can't see it. Maybe I'll put it in. But this book has a very unique cover. So today's world is very much judge a book by its cover, without reading the content, without understanding it, what it talks about, the consequences of the actions that were taken, right? So a ton of individuals, like we talked about previously, obviously this had a impact on your life from those who decided to read it or who just took a look at the cover. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So the first thing that happened was I announced that I announced that I wrote the book, and announced that it was going to be up for sale. And I put it up on Facebook. Facebook has a funny way of lying to you and telling you that your Facebook friends are your friends when, hey, there's some people that you just met sometimes. So out of a response to it, I got called a bigot. I got called a transphobe. I've gotten called a lot of things on those lines. It's kind of hard to bring up every single one of them.
Oh yeah.
But look, if you're an artist, you expect to have some level of scrutiny for the work that you put out. And I'm under no impression that I didn't write this. That's a funny way of saying it. I'm aware that writing something that's hypercritical of the society that you're living in is going to have some type of backlash. What I didn't really sign up for was to get doxxed, to get my personal information put out there, to get my phone number leaked, to get my email leaked, where I started getting harassed online, started getting harassed through my personal phone, where people are asking me to tell them about the book, who I didn't know them. They called me transphobe. They called me a bigot. They even harassed my family. But it's unfortunate that it feels like we just can't really have that discussion. So one of the things that happened, the book came out, some people reviewed it, some people absolutely loved it. And the people that loved it, hey, look, I think it's great. I think my own work is amazing. When I was reading, and the early reviews were fantastic. When it started getting out of, containment, I call it breaching containment, it was almost as if the people who were reading it and reviewing it were purposefully misunderstanding and taking my words out of context as much as possible to fit their prejudice about my work. And one of the things, this is one of the things that has frustrated me to no end, is where people, and again, it's like I said before with the use I use the N-word in my book unapologetically. And people criticize that, suggesting that I wasn't black enough to do it. Every single mixed race person goes through that type of experience where people are claiming that they're not enough of their own race, that they're not this. And this is one of the things that I have said this many times. This is a critique on the left. This is a critique on the left. And my personal opinions don't matter. One of the more interesting things about the movie Get Out is that it wasn't set in the South. It wasn't set in Alabama. They set it in Connecticut or wherever. It was set in the Northeast. It was a critique on white liberalism. And I did that same exact thing. And that's why I think I'm getting such a negative feedback from a lot of people reviewing my book terribly, because I am calling them out. I am going out of my way to say, hey, I am tired of seeing this level of hypocrisy. It is exhausting to see, where on one end, it's oh, you're so educated about this thing. And on the other end, behind closed doors, you're saying the N-word. It's a critique on that type of person. And I am exhausted with it. I thought Get Out did a great job of pointing out that type of hypocrisy. My book, I want to have in the same vein. But when these people are giving me, when people are review bombing me, people not even reading my book, and then just telling people that it's terrible, even though they haven't read it. And it's the funny thing about Get Out was that Jordan Peele had connections. I don't have those connections to be able to make my voice heard. I have to do everything from the ground up, and what they're doing to try to stifle my voice actually might end up working. Like great ideas do get snuffed out, like because some people just aren't well connected, and I'm not one of those people.
No, and being well connected is a very difficult thing to be. It's sometimes it's luck of the draw, sometimes it's complete grind. And
I'm grinding, man. I'm grinding.
and here's the thing, right? And being well connected and getting your voice out and all that kind of stuff. It's at least that I found, right? Because I've talked to very well connected individuals. I have family members that are very well connected. And one of the things that I find is that you got to be, it's one of those things that you got to be you have to be extremely passionate about, right? You have to be like, eat, sleep, and breathe. This is more important than any other aspect of your life. And it's a grind. And for some people, it's like, you know what? I love what I'm doing, but I also want to spend time with my family, or I also want to pursue X, Y, and Z things, which makes it harder to really hit that level. With that said, I know that, you and I talked before we hopped on the podcast. You've been grinding with this, and obviously you're starting to see great reviews come in, from people who decided to read the story, right? People who, actually like, hey, this is a great book. There's great content in here. There's a great story. And then there's people, like you said, where it's just, they look at it and it's immediately, we're going to go on the attack, because a lot of time they're just looking to find ways to get angry. They're looking to find ways to get angry. Okay, so another topic that I kind of want to cover is, I know that you went to, during Pride Month, you went to a couple of Pride festivals to discuss your book, because obviously, you can kind of guess what the transgender community is feeling. Obviously, you're going to get some reviews and some comments and yada, yada, yada. But the best way to really gauge how they feel about the book, what their actual thoughts are, is to talk to them in person, one-on-one. So I know that you went to a couple of these festivals, you discussed the cover and you discussed the contents of the book. So tell me about that. What was that like for you?
Yeah, well, the first thing I realized when I went to the Pride Festival is that it is a lot of fun. I mean, it is so lit. One of the things I just wish Black History Month wasn't in one of the coldest months of the year, because the Black History Month parade would be so dope. Oh my God, it would be so dope. But yeah, so to bring it back to the people I talked to. So I actually talked to lots of people. So in my experience, the people who tended to not want to talk to me ended up being like, cisgendered white people. Like those are the people who kind of just refused to talk to me or had issues with my cover. I talked to plenty of trans people, and not one of them actually had an issue with my cover. I asked them directly. I was like, what is your first thoughts when you see the cover? Do you think that the cover is transphobic? Not a single one of them told me that they thought it was transphobic. It was primarily people who weren't a part of that community who had a problem with it. Like that's one of the things that, and that's one of the things that I point out in the book, is that it's primarily not the people who are that sensitive. It's people who are on the outside who are trying to virtue signal for people in that community so that they get little points. They get internet points. Like that's what's going on. It's aggravating. I mean,
sorry to cut you off, but it just made me think. One of the things that I think is so funny, like I lived in Mexico for a while, and when you go to Mexico and if you see a white individual down there, the Mexicans aren't very like, oh my gosh, you're so racially insensitive. Like, if they put a sombrero on, or if they put like a poncho on, or if, they're participating in, the dancings and the festivals and the culture and all, they love it when you do that. It's like, yeah, like,
because it's enjoying the culture.
yeah,
Like
it's like,
that's
hey,
the
that's
whole.
awesome.
Yeah, though it's like one of the greatest successes of hip hop has been that kids from the suburbs listen to this. Like
Yeah,
it's a good thing when people enjoy your culture. Like
but
when people are like, "Hey, I want to be a part of your culture." This attire is something that I think is dope.
it's a
And
compliment.
I want to wear this. That's good. Like, that's a good thing.
But it's the people who want to be offended by this stuff that make the biggest deal about it. They
Yes.
make the biggest deal about it, and it's shocking because it's not their culture. It doesn't impact them. It doesn't do anything, but they just feel like they need to speak for these people instead of letting them speak for themselves, which is one of the most, for me, it's one of the most infuriating things because it's like they're gatekeepers for what is right and what is wrong for this community or this race or X, Y, and Z. So it's infuriating. So yeah, sorry to cut you off. It
No,
just
I mean that exact thing is in my book. That exact type of behavior is in my book where it's like someone wants to speak for that community that's not actually a part of that community. Because that's look, I'm spending a look, this is half my family that I'm trash talking right now. Like I am half white when I'm saying these things.
yeah,
This
yeah.
has got to stop. Like, this
I
behavior
agree.
has got to stop.
It needs to, but this is one of the infuriating things, right? Because a lot of people say that, oh well, it just takes one person to start a movement. Like, yes, I agree. It takes one person to start a movement. It takes one person to bring about change. But there will always be that one angry person that feels the need to speak for this community or this race or this or that. Just that one angry white person that isn't even part of that race, doesn't even know the culture, doesn't even know these people, doesn't have anything to do with it, but they feel like they need to be the protector, the gatekeeper, the person to be angry for it. So it infuriates me, to no end, but nonetheless, it is what it is. But
And that's the thing. At the Pride event, I experienced nothing but like the people who were willing to speak with me were nothing but cordial. They were incredibly respectful and they were incredibly open-minded. And it was, I reckon, and one of the things I have said it many times, I recognize that a lot of people in the trans community go through a lot of issues. It is very clear. It is abundantly clear. I have had people on online reviews tell me that I never said that, excuse me. I've had people in online reviews tell me that I never said anything about the trans community, and that it's kind of annoying because I never said that I cared about the trans community. Like, I know it sounds weird, but I never said that I care about them. I think that the way that they wanted me to respond is I have a black friend type of response, because that's the way that they would respond. They would say, it's like, oh, you're getting all this hate. You're supposed to say, hey, I have a trans friend. If you read the book, it is abundantly clear that I spent time talking to people in the trans community. It is abundantly clear. But why would I sit there and, in my defense, and just say, it's like, hey, I talked to this person. This person is now the representative for the entire trans community. They approved everything. Like, I'm not like that. I never had anyone approve my book.
Yeah.
Like, I just listened to people talk and I tried to tell a story. Like, I'm not gonna be operating in the same vein that people, when they are getting accused of racism, like, hey, you're racist. It's like, I have a black friend. My black friend looks like me. Like, can you imagine if someone was like, I got a black friend, and then it's like, that's like saying that it's like, oh, I'm your black friend is like saying pizza's Italian food. Like, look, I get it. Technically, yes, I am a member of the black community. But bro, if you're talking about Italian food, you got to be talking about like fettuccine alfredo. You cannot bring pizza into the conversation. You can't do that. Like,
and even then, people are going to be like, "Oh, you mean Olive Garden food?" And
yeah,
and that's to defend the Italian community.
Yeah,
it's crazy,
Yeah.
But no, I completely understand. Like they want you to be like, "Oh, well, like that perfect answer. I have a black friend, or I have a trans friend." It's just one of those things where they're never happy.
Yeah.
It's very hard to make them happy, especially when people are looking for ways to be offended.
Yeah.
Um,
And
or they're
unfortunately, those are the
looking for
people who
ways,
write reviews.
yeah, or they're looking for ways to, I want these people to be oppressed so that I can continue to defend them because their identity is based around social justice, where it's like, I need them to have problems so that I can continue to be their defender. I can continue to be their savior.
This
But
is
when you talk
this
to
is
a lot of
yeah.
people, they or like in whether it's a black community, a trans community, they're just like, well, you know what, like yes, I'm sure that a lot of them have experienced and continue to experience his issues, um but a lot of them are just like, I'm just living my life,
Yeah.
I'm just doing
This
my.
is one of the things that I really want to touch on this. So, black side of my family, both my grandparents were college educated. And when you're college educated and growing up in the deep South, you face actual, like, hardcore discrimination. We're talking about, like, I'm talking about crosses. I'm talking about my black side of the family faced the KKK. They faced the burning crosses. This is not what there is nothing that you do not want to go through that. Like, one of the things that I greatly appreciate about my grandparents' generation is that they paved the path for us. They didn't choose this. Like, some people have greatness thrust upon them. They didn't ask. Like, I guarantee you, if I could talk to my grandparents today, they'd have said, we didn't want to deal with the KKK. We didn't want to deal with
Why would
burning crosses. That scared the hell out of my daughter. That scared the hell out of my mother. That scared the hell out of my uncles. Like, that's what they went through. Of course, there are still issues that are going on today. Of course there are. But what we're going through right now is not the same thing as facing the fire hoses. It's not the same thing as getting dog sicked on you. What we're going through right now is the Joshua generation. We have a very different experience. And I think it is equally as important, like the whole, like, social justice thing. Yes, they're like, and I want to talk about, like, the social justice thing from a black perspective. I don't like how white people took over that term. I don't like that. It's the same thing with the term woke. I said woke, growing up, because, like, that was part of my community, and now it's a whole different thing. That's annoying. Like, it's really annoying. But my grandparents fought for social justice. They fought to have equal rights. They were the same people who faced the milkshakes being dumped on their heads. Like, what we're going through it's a fight that needs to be fought. But to I feel like a lot of people just wish that same crap was going on, because then they would have something to complain about. And it's like, when you actually face it, there is no, oh, I'm so happy this is going on. It is terrible. Straight up, it's terrible. No, sorry. I just
no. That's great. That's an amazing way to put it. It's like they want the worst of the worst to happen so that they can get out there to defend. But it's like, why do you want individuals to go through this? Like, and I've talked to a number of black people, or I hate to say it like this, like, I have black friends where where it's just like, there are some who really feel like, no, like, I have faced racial discrimination, and I want to fight this fight. And I'm like, dude, man, if someone's doing this to you, dude, I'm there to defend you. I also have other black friends where they're just like, honestly, I don't know where this discrimination's coming from. Like, I've just kind of lived my life, and everything's
because every single person has a different experience.
Exactly.
And it feels like a lot of people want to lump other people into, and this is one of the, I'm specifically talking about, like, my book has been a sharp critique on the left, because, hey man, like, I see this growing up, and one of the things that I have been saying many times is I have been unhappy with the blatant hypocrisy. A lot of these things. Hey, I strongly believe in, gay rights. Yeah. I strongly believe in, strongly believe in civil rights. I strongly believe in promoting equity. But when you're talking about promoting equity, and then you're against affordable housing in your neighborhood, you're not actually for that. You like that, and that's what I wanted to point out in the book. I'm tired of I'm very tired of the liberal hypocrisy.
Well, it's typically, the white liberals up in Washington that have that issue. So, where it's like, oh, equity, but just not in my community.
Yep.
And so yeah, I totally get that. So kind of heading towards back the book for a minute here. Obviously we've gone in a lot of different directions, how we feel, your own experiences.
Yeah, look, I'll say it like this. I think, look, of course I believe this about my own work, but I think that if you really dissect every single thing that's in my book, it could take up an entire semesters of learning. Like there's a lot in it. There's a lot in it.
I imagine so. And here's the, people really should, the number one thing that, I felt growing up is to never judge a book by its cover, right? You just don't know what something or who someone could be, or who they are, but you look at them, they could be all tatted up, or they could be all raggedy, or they could be, just one of those things. So I mean, and it really converts to books as well, yes. Right? Don't judge a book by its cover, because you can pick it up and you could be taken through a great story of, holy cow, this was awesome, and you can apply those lessons to your life. But based on a cover, you're just like, nope, yes. Or this book is going to be this.
And that's one of the things like when people have had a very negative reaction to my book cover, I made the book cover to be as non-statement making as possible. I wrote it to be very ambiguous. And here's the thing, the truth is, it is okay to feel like it's okay to have issues with the cover. It's okay to have that. It's okay to have your first reaction be like, hey, this is going to be transphobic. Or it's okay to say, or it's okay. And it's also okay to say your first reaction to be, oh, I like the cover. It's okay to have that be a reaction. That is your preconceived notion.
Yeah.
The issue is when you actually read the book and you twist my words and you change language and you just add things to it that I didn't put in there to fit your original prejudice. Like what I believe that racism is prejudice meeting action. Like when you're prejudiced, like every single person is prejudiced. That's okay to be prejudiced. But the issue is when that prejudice manifests itself into actual behavior. That's the issue. I don't like, it's okay to react to something in your own head and say, hey, you know what? I need to take a second to think about this. That's okay. Yeah. But it's like when you're reading the book and it's disproving every single one of your preconceived notions. But instead of saying, hey, you know what? I was wrong. You twist my words to make it say something that I didn't say. That's when I have a problem.
No,
I have a serious problem with that.
No, I completely, and people tend to do that with everything. Like they will take, it's a big thing with the media too. They will take one aspect of something that is said and they will hang on that and they will twist everything to manipulate it to make it look a certain way that fits their narrative. And in regards to, being prejudiced, like in everything, like in your mind, if I look at someone or something and I feel scared or I feel angry or if I feel sad or if I feel like, it's okay, because like it's how you're feeling. Like feelings are something that like you really don't have a control of. It's really hard to control your feelings, but like you said, you are able to control your action. You are able to control your action. So if you see something and you have an initial thought, an initial feeling, like, okay, but it's when it manifests. So if you look at the book cover and you go like, oh, this book is transphobic or it's X, Y, and Z, and now you're not going to read it. If you aren't going to pick it up and read it, you will never know. And it can be the complete opposite of what you're thinking. And the lessons that, or not even the lessons, but, the story or the things that you're trying to convey in your book, they'll never get across. They'll just,
and one of the things like, and this isn't too much of a spoiler at all. The the thing that I was like, the number one thing that I was trying to do with, like, because I have a trans character in the book. Number one thing I was trying to do with the trans character in the book, it's not promote an agenda. It's not to say, hey, you know, you need to feel this way or another. The number one thing that I wanted to do with that character was say, hey, this is a person.
Yeah.
Hey, like, there's all this stuff in the media, and you might not actually know a trans person, but I wanted to humanize. Like, I'm serious. I didn't want to promote one ideology or another. All I wanted to do was say, hey, you know what? This is a person. And I think that a lot of people get too caught up with their own agenda and with their own, hey, you need to feel this way or that way, and try to force that down people's throats. My thing was just like, hey, this is a person, and this person is going through a very human experience. That's it. That's it. You know, so
That's amazing. And you know what? I'm the type of individual where it's like, listen, there are, you know, 7+ billion people in the world. Not everyone's going to be the same. Not everyone is going to be religious. Not everyone is going to be trans. Not everyone's going to fall in this community or that community. But at the end of the day, you know, as long as you're being a good human, right? As long as you're being a good person, you're not attacking me for my beliefs. I'm not attacking you for your beliefs. You know, treat others like humans. And you know, I completely fall under that belief. Jordan, this has been amazing. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about with your book? Where can we get it? Any other things that came to mind?
yeah, you can purchase on Amazon. Other things that came to mind, not too much. There's a lot more I can say, but we only got a limited amount of time, man. Oh man, it's gonna be a lot. Like, when I'm talking in public and I could do my first Q&A session, I'm gonna have a lot of fun, man. I'm gonna have a lot of fun. So I won't put it all out there. Well, you kind of scratch the surface.
Everyone go out there, read the book. You can go check out some of the interviews that he's done with the trans community, LGBTQ community on his TikTok, and see some other media that he has going on. But with that, Jordan, thanks so much for coming on the Not Too Cool for School podcast, and we'll see you next time.
No, absolutely. See ya.